I got asked a question over the weekend just about breaking in tightly stitched, like 2 or 3 mil machine stitched ball goo. Okay, so this is my 2 mil set. I'm going to show you two methods, primarily for breaking in the men, but we'll talk about the other components as well. And this first one was shown to me by Junichi Tashiro sensei, who's Kyoshi Hachidan at time of posting, last time I saw him. And it revolves around getting the back of the men to form around the back of your skull properly, which will allow you to bring the mendare in a more forward position, and that's going to allow you to achieve the optimal fit and the best level of comfort possible for your men. Okay, so first thing to note is we want to avoid takomen. Okay, so the mendare, the shoulder flaps, they should never point upwards. They should always come forwards. Okay, so upwards like this is incorrect. Forwards like this, that's what we're going for. Okay, in order to do that properly, you need to be able to tie the knot flush to the back of your head, and it needs to be at the height of your eyes for everything to work. Okay, that's going to make the men fit correctly. Okay, so here's how we're going to do this. We're going to take the back side walls of the men, and we're going to roll them inwards and push them downwards towards the monomi. The monomi is those bars that are wider apart that you look through. You're going to push it down and towards those. You can be very vigorous and heavy-handed with this, okay? You need to get your fist like at least halfway down the depth of the men, okay? You can probably even get it as far as the uchiwa, you know, like towards where you put your chin, right? In terms of depth, like how far you can push it down. So you're just going to grab it with your fingers, roll it inwards, and push down with the heel of your hand, okay? And you can kind of really lean into it. And you just do this a few times, like, I don't know, 5 or 10 times per side. And if your man is pretty compliant, that should be pretty much it for shaping the back of the men, okay? And then all you got to worry about after that is folding the mendare forwards, okay? To take advantage of this nice kind of dip that you've put on each side of the men. And that's the important thing, right? So when you feel this back of your head, you know, it's not straight on both sides. It kind of curves inwards. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to allow that curve to take shape in the back of the men. Okay, so once you've got that done, as I said, that should now give you the freedom to be able to pull the mendare into the forward position. And again, you can be quite vigorous with that. Okay, the fabric is very stiff, so you want to be pretty heavy-handed with this. Okay, so that's the dimple I was talking about, yeah? And it's from that dimple, from the height of that dimple, that your mendare should start to come forward. Most people, when they do this, the mendare are only coming forward from too low, right? They're doing it from shoulder height. It shouldn't. It should start coming forward from eye height. Okay, so now let's get into the second method. You can use this in combination with the first method if your man is very stubborn, or if you're just, I don't know, maybe you feel like you're not strong enough to get the kind of bends done on the first method, or maybe you're worried you're going to break it. That won't happen. Trust me, it won't. But anyway, there is a second method that you can use. I've used both and they work quite well. The second method will take months though, okay? And it revolves tying up the men in a certain way to mimic what we just did, okay? But because it's not, you're not bending the fabric as much, it's going to take a longer time to coach in. So all you want to do is lay out your himo pretty much as you would wear the men, okay? So the himo attached to the mengane, the bars, on the fourth bar. That's really important. Don't let anyone tell you different, okay? This is straight, as I say, from a kendogu professional. They need to tie to the fourth bars. And then when you crisscross them at the back of the men here, the crisscross needs to be at the same height as the monomi. Again, that's the two wider spaced bars. Needs to be positioned at eye level. Okay, that's what those bars are for, is for you to look through. So position the crisscross in the himo at that height, as you can see here. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to do is just take the loose ends of the himo from the front of the men, bring them around the side, And we're just going to make sure that we work all the slack out of the system. What we're going to do is we're going to tighten everything up so that the two side walls of the men meet in the middle. And at this point, it's a really good idea to just check that you don't have any crisscrossing of the hemo, because they'll trap themselves and you'll get slack trapped in the system. And it's going to be really annoying if you get to the end of this tying process and then it sort of undoes itself. You need as much tension as you can get on the men for this method to be of any value. Okay. So just go around and just make sure that there's no slack in the system. And once you're ready, you're just going to, as I say, bring it round, and we're going to tighten the hemo so that the two side walls of the men meet in the middle at eye height. Okay. And then from there, you just want to tie, as if you were going to tie the men normally, but we're not going to make a loop. We're not going to make a bow. We're just going to tie it like a double knot. Okay. So like left over right, and then just do the same again. It's fine. Remember, we don't have to tie this up to like look nice, or we do want it to look neat and tidy. So yeah, you can do it yoke musubi. You can go left over right, right over left. That's fine. It's not a problem, but it's not like completely necessary, because it's not a decorative knot for what we're using it for. Okay, so anyway, once you have that in place, flip the men on its side. Okay. And we're going to bend the mendare into the forward position and really flatten it against the men, okay? Now you won't be able to fold it like a piece of paper. It's going to put up a bit of a fight. That's okay, but just get it as close and as flat as possible, and just make sure it's pointing straight forwards, okay? Then grab the loose end of your himo, make a loop with your fingers, and pass that through the inside of the men between the 4th and 5th bars. So your chichikawa, the leather bit that fixes your hemo to the bars, should be on the 4th bar. So it should be going just above that leather bit like that. Okay. Next, grab the loose end. Keep hold of that loop. Grab the loose end from the back of the men. Bring that round to trap the mendare in that forward position. Okay, you might need to lean on the men to keep the mendare flat while you do this. And then just pull that through, and you're going to work out the slack from the loop you just made from inside the men to outside the men. Okay, because that loop needs to be quite big for you to work with it initially, but once you start tightening this down, you don't need that. Okay, so that's what we're doing when we work out the slack. Then just pull that straight back on itself against the mendare and push it underneath that first wrap that you made. Okay, and basically you just bring a loop of it through. So just bring like half of the himo through and leave half on the other side, and that basically just makes like a trap loop. And then just shimmy that back loop all the way around to where the bend is in the mendare at the back, because that's where the mendare is going to be pushing out the most, right? Trying to unfurl itself. So you're going to use that pressure that it's generating to trap that loop there. And that's what it looks like. Okay, so very simple. And again, just keep the himo on the side wall of the men, together, like when you wear it, neat and tidy. Keep the loop and the end of the loop the same length, so it looks neat and tidy. And we're just going to repeat the process on the other side. So again, pass your loop through between the 4th and 5th bars. Fold the mendare into the forward position, nice and flush and flat against the side wall of the men. Grab the loose end, bring it round, and trap the mendare. Bring that through the loop. Work out the slack from the inside of the men to the outside of the men. And then pull that round back on itself. Okay. And now we can push through a loop, trapping it under the first wrap that we made. And then lastly, we're going to just shimmy that back towards the actual fold of the mendare itself, just to trap that with the maximum tension that we can. Okay, once that's completed, that's job done, okay? And I recommend that you use this method when you take your bulgur out of the bulgur bag and you get it ready for drying. You tie it like this to dry it, okay? When you dry your men, never have it with the bars facing down, okay? You always set it flat down with the bars facing forward and up, okay? So this is how it's going to sit. Now, even after you've finished breaking in your men using this method, which might take a couple of months worth of doing, you're still going to set your men down like this to dry it. You're just not going to have to tie the mendare up anymore. In fact, you won't have to tie the men up at all, aside from just keeping it neat and tidy. You won't actually need to tie it. Not for shape keeping anyway. But that's it. That's how you shape the men, okay? And to undo this, all you have to do is just pull at the loose ends, yeah, of those loops you just made, and they should just slip out really easily. And then just pull the loops from the inside of the men again, and they should slip out really easily. Undo the double knot, and set your hemo out neatly, you know, for practice on top of your kote as you usually do. And it should be good to go. Last thing to note is that when you tie your men on, when you're actually wearing it, you know, tie it really nice and snug. Like tie it like it feels a bit too tight to wear, and make sure that the bow is tied at the height of your eyes. And then the last step that you do is pull the mendare from the back, you know, on top of your shoulders, the side of your head, like right from where the knot is. You just pull them out and forward, and be really firm with that. And what that'll do is open up a nice air pocket over your ears and your temples. And in fact, when you tie that knot, tie it maybe an inch below where you need it to sit, so like an inch below eye height. So that way when you pull the flaps forward, it'll force the knot about an inch up, and it should sit perfectly. And you'll be looking through those nice wide bars, and everything will fit nicely, and it'll be comfortable and be snug against your head. Okay, so that's the men. And let's move along now to the kote. Everything's a lot simpler now from here on out. So with the kote, the main things are you've got the outer surfaces, the protection surfaces to break in a little bit, just for, you know, being able to use your shinai more comfortably for tenouchi, you know, for the grip. And then the palm is obviously the main thing that gives people a bit of jip when you first buy them. So there's two methods I'm going to show you here today. You can use both of them, but only one of them is relevant for when the kote are new. We'll start with the daily maintenance though. This is stuff that you can do to your kote to make them last longer and more comfortable, but you can do this for the entire life of the kote. So the first method involves just grab the fingers and the thumb and just bend them outwards and backwards. And this is just going to stretch the palm out a little bit so that it's nice and flat and all the wrinkles come out of it. Next thing you're going to do is massage from the inside of the palm to the outer edges, and just go in a range of different directions, okay? Massage it with your thumb. What happens is when you practice and you get lots of sweat in the grip, you know, when you're holding a shinai, there are creases and crinkles that the salt from your sweat collects in. And if left unchecked, it basically means that the grip is going to stiffen in some areas more rapidly than it does in other areas, and that'll make it more prone to tearing and cracking, okay? So what we're trying to do is spread out the salt and the sweat after practice. So it's ideal that you do this method when you first get your bulgur home. When you take your kote out to air them, you do this and then you leave them to air, okay? And as I say, it just kind of spreads all the moisture and the salt out evenly, and it's going to prevent like localized stiffening within the palms. So that's one side of what you do, and that's daily maintenance. That in combination with washing your kote like maybe 2 or 3 times a year should be enough to make them last quite a long time. The thing that you do when they're brand new is just roll the fingers in towards the center of the palm and roll the thumb in towards the center of the palm. That's good for kind of just taking a bit of the excess tension out of them when they're brand new. And you just do them a couple of times, like you might do it for a couple of weeks. That in combination with actually using them, that'll break them in, and they'll be nice and easy to use and comfortable And that goes for like old school sets of kote. Newer, more modern sets or jisengata sets, they'll just break in just from using them. You probably won't need to do this. But certainly for looking after the deer skin palms, I still recommend just doing that basic stretching and thumb massaging. Okay. Right, let's move on to the tare. This is the last major component, and we'll just talk about storage of it when it's in your bogu bag, because that's important as well. Okay, so for the tare, the main consideration, well, actually, the first thing we'll consider is just the mae obi. So an obi is like a belt, right? So the mae is forward-facing obi. This top section here. All you need to do is just kind of flex it in on itself. You can just roll it, inwards on itself, left to right. Okay. And a lot of people don't really notice that that's not fitting them correctly when they first buy their bogu. But you'll notice because you won't be able to tie it snug and tight enough to your body, and it'll have a tendency to kind of slip down onto your hips. It won't be sitting just above your hips. It should like ride on top of your hips. It shouldn't slide down past that point. So if that's happening to you and you're tying it as tight as you can and still getting problems, this could help. Next is we'll look at the actual the kind of panels. The point of these panels, the way they protect you, is if you get like a missed door strike, it should kind of glance off your body. Okay, it should be encouraged to kind of wash outwards. So it's not just about looking nice, it's also about protection. And it's the same with what we were doing with the mendare. That's why they face forward. Okay. So all you do is just grab the outer bottom edge and you're going to roll that into the inner top edge. Okay. Nice and tight. Roll it up, hold it like for 10 seconds, and then repeat. And do that for both sides. You can also, I haven't demonstrated it in this video, but you can do it for the two inner flaps as well. And it creates a really nice aesthetic. You're going to have to do this for months, maybe even years, for it to naturally just sit like this. So the best thing to do is every time you put the tare on, as practice is starting, and people are kind of like still warming up and getting the kit out and stuff like that, turn up nice and early. Take a few moments when you're putting on your tare, sit in seiza, and tie the tare on, and then just do this at the end. So for the center one, you just want to roll the front up and inwards for a third, and then just bend the middle of it outwards and forwards so that it forms like like a concave roof. Yeah, or like a corrugated roof, I should say. And then you just let go and it creates this nice flick outwards. That nice little flick outwards, what that does is it's purely aesthetic in one sense, but it actually does have a secondary function, which is it'll stop your nafuda or zeken, the actual nameplate itself, the little sack that you put on. It'll stop that sliding downwards and off quite so easily. You'll notice that if you have like a damaged elastic, that tends to happen. To avoid damaging the elastic, whenever you take that off for like gratings or washing your bogu, just make sure that you hold the center panel, you bend the left and right side of that inwards and then slide the nafuda off, and that'll avoid damage to the elastic. But it does happen over time anyway, just through wear and tear. So yeah. Okay, this is all very well and wonderful. We've got everything kind of broken in and it's flexing nicely. It has a nice shape, all looks good, right? Typically what happens is when you put it in your bogu bag, if you do this wrong, you lose all your hard work. So here's how I put my bogu in my bogu bag. First thing is when you set the tare down on the floor, make sure that the inside of the tare is on the floor and the nafuda, the nameplate, is facing up towards you. Okay, that's the first thing. Then we're going to take the longer himo from the door, the ones that usually go over your shoulders. We're going to set everything upright and we're going to wrap those longer himo around the front. Okay, and you're going to tie a nice bow around the front, nice and snug and tight. And you're going to tie that yoko musubi, right, so that the knot sits horizontally. It's the way you should be tying all your knots when you're wearing your kendogu. So if in doubt, just go left over right, right over left. Okay, and the two knots will kind of cancel each other out so that they can't pull loose from the inside. Okay. Now you'll notice that the flaps on the tare, they're now, you can see them kind of bending in like that, and we're taking advantage of the cutout where our arms come through for the door. So where you're wearing your door, there's cutouts so that you can move your arms freely, and obviously you don't need protection on the ribs, so that's why those gaps are as big as they are, because we're only using a shinai, so it keeps the weight of the bogu down. So we're using that for those flaps in the tare to sit on. From there, just go ahead and tie the sides, the shorter himo, as you usually do. I prefer to kind of wrap them once around from outside to inside. Then I create a little wrap down the bottom using the free end, and I push a loop through that and just tie it tight. And that ties the himo to itself in the similar manner that you tie the himo in a loop on itself when you tie the shoulder, the door on your shoulders. It's a similar principle to that. It looks really nice and neat and tidy, and you can easily pull it loose when you turn up for training or a seminar or something like that, and you need to get ready quickly. You just pull the loose ends and it's ready to rock. So that's how I like to do it. The point of this is, as I said, you've taken advantage of the space from the cutouts in the door, so that you don't lose the shape in your tare after all that work that you just did to get it in there in the first place. But the next part that we need to then pay attention to is when we actually go ahead and we put it in the bogu bag. So that's the bit I'll show you next. Okay, so once we're ready to put it in the bogu bag, this is how we do it. We set everything face down, as we just had it. Set the men with the top side down, just like this, and it's just tied up like when we use it at the dojo, and set the kote in using the space available. The kote being there stops the mendare from going up into the octopus position, okay? And the cutouts in the door that are there for your arms are there for the tare to kind of sit in nicely. So when you put this all in your bogu bag and you zip it up and the bogu bag's kind of pressing down on it a bit, and it's getting chucked in and out of cars and stuff like that, it's not going to take away from the natural shape of your bogu. That way, when you go and you put it back on again, you just tie it up, pull the mendare flaps forward. As I said, just take a bit of time to make your tare look nice. When you tie it, everything should fit like a glove and look really, really, really nice, like high-level shaped kendogu, okay? So that's it. That's from top to bottom how to break in and look after your bogu and just get a good shape. I hope that video is really helpful. Any questions, throw them in the comments. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video and it was useful. And until next time, take it easy.